right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for our, excuse me, there we go, for our webinar about adjusting to online classes during this time. First, we just want to remind everybody that this is unprecedented for everybody, and it's important to remember that everyone in the UMass Lowell campus community wants to see you succeed, and everyone's working together to give you the best possible semester given the current circumstances. None of us signed up for this, and I think it's really important to remember that, but it's also really important to keep in mind that everyone is working together to give you the best possible experience, and the supports that you've always had are still here for you. They might look different, and they might be in different formats, but they're still here, we're still available, your professors are still available, RHSA staff is still available, so let us know what you might need, and let your peer leaders know what you might need, and we'll be able to help you out just from a distance. So you're we skipped a slide, that's fine. So you're experiencing new challenges in your home and personal lives, and those could be different study conditions, whether you're adjusting to online classes, social distancing and not spending that much time with your friends. Maybe you're caring for family members, or you've seen changes in your work schedule and settings, or maybe you have difficulty accessing Wi-Fi or technology. All of these things are things that we can help you with to an extent, and we're going to help you sort of understand how to combat these things. So this presentation contains concrete steps to help ease the transition from campus life to online courses. So we're going to talk about 4 different things. First, we're going to talk about how to prepare for online classes and the switch to online classes during this time. Second, we're going to focus on how to create a productive remote work environment for yourself so that you can accomplish the things that you need to accomplish for your classes in this new format. Third, we're going to be talking about handling stress and negative emotions during this time, because it's very important that you take care of yourself in order to be successful. And lastly, we'll have a bit of a discussion about your questions and concerns. So there's some key vocabulary that you might start hearing over the next week or so, and I felt that this was really important to go over because professors might not necessarily go over it, and we still want you to know this information. So synchronous learning is a term that's used to describe a learning style in which all students and the professor log into a meeting platform like we're doing right now at the same time to hold class virtually. So professors are only allowed to hold these sessions during the regularly scheduled class time, but they can help to preserve the interactive lecture or discussion format that a lot of us are really used to in our classes. Most of your classes, however, will probably be using what's called asynchronous learning. So students don't log in together to work during class time. Work is completed on the student's own time and schedule. So examples of this might be if your professors have asked you to use discussion boards or watch a lecture and write a response to that. Some classes will be doing a hybrid of these 2 types of learning styles. So for example, Rosanna and I are taking a class right now in which we have a synchronous learning session every other week during class time. And then the other weeks are an asynchronous learning style in which we do some reading, post a discussion board, or write a response to the reading in some other manner. So just by a show of the chat, or just unmuting yourselves and letting us know, have any of you taken an online class before?
Well, I have, but it was never like this. Like, we never used Zoom to talk with professors or anything like that. It was more like we were working on our own.
Okay. Were you in high school, or was it last semester?
I was in high school.
Okay. What about any other folks? Has anybody else taken an online class before? And if you haven't, that's also fine.
I've never taken an online class. The closest I've taken to an online class was when I was helping my father with his classes while he was in college.
Okay. So definitely some mixed experience here, but that's totally fine. A lot of students are in that same boat, and a lot of students have never taken an online class before. But this will give you the sort of concrete steps to take to make sure that you're successful in those classes and make the transition as smoothly as possible. So there's a couple of different key technologies that you're going to be using during the rest of the semester, and I wanted to make sure that we go over those. So the first is Zoom, which is the video conferencing software that we're using right now. You can create a free account using a personal email address, but you don't have to follow the links that professors have made for you. It might be useful if you do group projects or stuff like that, but you can also use Google Hangouts or any other web conferencing software for that for free. Professors, advisors will be doing either phone, Zoom, or Skype to conduct most of their meetings. Make sure you're looking out for emails from your advisors about advising. Kelly, if you want to say anything about advising, since you are an advisor.
Sure. It's happening. We're still here to support all of you. If you most likely have received communication from your advisor, but we still are here via Zoom, email, phone calls, all that fun stuff. So keep on reaching out to your academic advisor. And then the other thing I want to just remind everyone, because I know we're asking you what you're planning to do over the summer and fall, and that might be a little bit overwhelming at the moment. We work all summer, so we're here to support you now and all through the summer if any adjustments need to be changed. So just don't be afraid to reach out. We are literally waiting at our computers to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. So the other technology that you're going to be using is Blackboard. How many, just by a show of unmuting yourselves and letting us know, how many of your courses have already used Blackboard before this semester? Yep, Milka, you can unmute yourself and just go ahead, or I can unmute you. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, my classes have already used Blackboard, so that's
Okay, cool. So Milka's classes have already used Blackboard. What about you, Jayla?
Yeah, all of my classes have used them before.
Okay, cool. So for folks who aren't familiar with Blackboard, if they're watching the recording after the fact, Blackboard is UMass Lowell's online learning software. Most classes already have some sort of Blackboard component, but all of your courses will be going into the on-campus Blackboard hub, essentially, and that login information is available online. It's just your UMass Lowell student email and password. But that will become your new dashboard and the hub for your courses. If you were already taking an online course this semester, those courses will remain in the online learning portal, as it were. So just being aware that there are two different ones, and if you were taking classes on campus, you will still be logging into the on-campus Blackboard, even though all of classes have moved online. So I've already asked you how many of you have used Blackboard before, and it appears to be quite a few. So transitioning to remote learning, by now you should have received emails from your professors about what format the course will take and updated syllabi. So for example, is it synchronous? Is it asynchronous? Have assignments been changed? That sort of thing. I actually have a checklist on the next slide of everything that you should sort of consider when you're looking at these syllabi, and we'll get to that in just a second. Put all new assignments, due dates, etc. into your planner or your calendar so that you can really keep track. An important thing that I think a lot of students need to hear right now is that online classes are not harder, they're not impossible, but they do require more self-motivation and awareness of due dates and that self-organization. They really require some self-efficacy as well, being able to advocate for yourself. If you are lost, ask for help. And professors will communicate to you, or should have already communicated to you, what channels they're available by for help. Some of them might be running office hours via Zoom, some of them might be running appointment phone calls, that sort of thing. And Centers for Learning is also still offering tutoring via Zoom. So it's super important that if you feel like you might not understand what's going on, that you're reaching out and you're asking for that help, because the lack of in-person courses means that a professor might not see the look on your face and see that you're confused or see that you might not understand what's going on. So it's super important that you're taking that initiative and making sure that you're asking for what you need. So this is the checklist that I was talking about important questions to answer for each class. First, will there be synchronous learning involved? If so, you should put that on your calendar right away. Have any due dates changed? So have papers been pushed up or back? Have any assignments or due dates been added or removed? So some things might just not translate to an online course. So as a result, the assignment may have been removed from the course. Or there might be now extra assignments because instead of going to class every week, you have to post a discussion board post. So just sort of keeping in mind what things have changed, what different things have been added or subtracted. How will you submit assignments? So for folks who are already using Blackboard, chances are it's probably Blackboard. For folks who were maybe submitting paper copies of assignments or emailing things in, you should check to see how you're submitting assignments now that everyone is not on campus. Fifth, are quizzes or exams being offered virtually? If quizzes or exams are being offered virtually, you should familiarize yourself with what some of the parameters are for those exams. Will there be time limits on those? What type of exams are they? And further, we'll talk about next, sort of where you're going to take those quizzes or exams to be able to set yourself up for success. And then lastly, like I was saying before, how can you get help if you need it? So is your professor running office hours? Are they going to ask you to schedule a Zoom meeting with them? Are they going to ask you to call them with questions or email them with questions? Every professor is going to deal with this a little bit differently. So you're going to want to make sure that all of these questions are answered in a place that makes sense for you. For the class that I'm currently taking, I actually went through all of these questions and wrote them out in my planner. So I was able to fully understand what things were changing and get a really nice picture of the whole thing. I would recommend that you do the same if you're able. So creating a productive home work environment is one of the most challenging things about working from home. Home is where we go to relax and not necessarily to do work normally, and there can definitely be some additional stressors at home, whether that's you're caring for a family member or you're caring for pets that are around or you're babysitting younger siblings or cousins. It can definitely be a challenge to be productive when you're at home. So some things to keep in mind: if you don't have a reliable internet connection or access to internet regularly, there are currently internet providers that are giving free service for 60 days during this time. And that is in an email that Matt sent out last night. So if you find yourself in that situation, look into those resources, because that will make sure that you are able to set yourself up best you can to be able to complete your work while still remaining in social isolation. So the first thing is setting up a workspace, and this is going to require a little bit of self-reflection. Think about what works for you, and this can be a discussion a little bit too. This doesn't just have to be me talking at you. Think about what works for you on campus. Where do you like to study? So if we want to answer that first question, where do we like to study on campus?
I usually go to the library or I go back to my dorm to do most of my work.
Okay, what about other folks?
For me, there was this like study room that I would go to, or just anywhere that I was isolated and it was quiet.
Okay. So using these two sort of different, sorry, my slides keep skipping. Using these two sort of different approaches, we can look at this in a way. So for one person, quiet and alone time is really important to be able to concentrate. And for other folks, that's not necessarily as important. Like they can operate with a little bit more background noise or a little bit less structure. Whatever works for you is the right answer. If you're the kind of person who needs some white noise in the background, who needs some music in the background, go for it. If you're the kind of person that requires some real quiet and alone time to focus, try to see if you can figure out how to set up a workspace that will be facilitative of that. You should also set up a workspace that's not a space for something else. So for example, if you're able to do your work at a kitchen table or at a coffee table in the living room, that's going to make you a little bit more set up for success than if you're trying to do your work on your bed in your room. And I would say that whether or not you were on campus or off, but I think in the fact that we can't really leave our homes as much anymore, that's super important to be able to find a workspace that works for you and allows you to be productive. So this next one is hard, but it's really important, especially when we're in a new environment and can't necessarily go to a fortress of solitude. Avoiding multitasking and distractions. So while it's really tempting to be sitting at home and have Netflix on the TV or have a YouTube video playing in the background, it's really important that you're focusing on your work, because multitasking and distractions actually make your work take longer. We want to sort of expedite the processes of getting work done at home so that you don't have to challenge yourself to focus for double the amount of time like you would if you were multitasking. And the distractions can be abundant when we're at home. They can be parents asking you if you need anything. They can be a friendly dog who really wants to go on a walk, but you really have to write this paper. Like, those things can look like so many different things, and some are easier to avoid than others. So really work on that if you can. And if you are having difficulties with that, please by all means let us know, and we can help work with you one-on-one to try to facilitate what avoiding distractions, or what sort of getting the time that you need and what you need out of this, how that can happen. Be sure to utilize technology, whether it's asking your professors for help, whether it's working with other people on a group project. Make sure that you're using every tool available to you and that you're able to do that in a way that you're comfortable with, because technology is what's going to really help everybody get through this. Whether it be you're contacting staff or faculty, it's super important that you're going to get comfortable with the technology you're using. Next, you're going to want to check in every day, or Monday through Friday anyway. So essentially, Blackboard will get updated pretty regularly, and there's a nice dashboard. To your right-hand side, it will show you due dates for things that are upcoming. So it'll show you things that are due today, things that are due next week, and things that are due in the future. That can be super helpful because it sort of collates everything that you have from your class, from all the classes that you're taking. And that will be another way of keeping you organized and on track. The other thing to note is if you have weekend things, essentially, so if you have things due on the weekend, make sure that you know when those are due and that you're either turning those in early on the days that you've deemed to be your work days, or that you're logging in on the days those things are due to upload. So the next thing is something that I do even when I'm not working at home. It's called the Pomodoro technique, and it's a way of giving yourself short breaks within periods of work so you don't become overwhelmed by the amount of work that you have. So you can do this one of two ways. You can either work for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, or work for 50 minutes and take a 10-minute break. I personally like to do the 50-10 split because it makes my break feel a little bit more substantial and a little bit more of a reward after working for a solid 50 minutes. However, I do know that when I started using this technique, I couldn't go the full 50 minutes. I had to do the 25 and 5. But the really important thing about this method is making sure that you have the self-discipline to go back after your break. So there are a few ways that you can do this. I do recommend timing yourself. If you're a Mac user, there are a couple of extensions that will actually time for you right on your computer, and you can actually type in the things that you have to do and their tasks, and it can actually break down the number of tasks that you have and label the blocks of time and all that kind of stuff. I forget what one I used to use, but I know they exist. You can also just time yourself or set alarms. That's also totally fine. But I really do recommend this as a way of combating the urge to maybe, oh, I'm just going to watch YouTube in the background, or like, I'm going to answer text messages while I write this paper. Like, it really increases productivity in a way that doesn't leave you on your phone halfway in the middle of the paper for an hour. I really like it. And then the last thing that's most important is know when to stop for the day. You really need to take care of yourself, and that's super important in this time. And if you're exhausted and working for 12 hours a day, that's not going to help you be productive. What's going to help you be productive is if you're organized, if you stay on top of your tasks, and if once you're done with your tasks for the day and you're ahead a little bit and you want to stop, that's totally fine. As long as you are on top of your responsibilities, know when to stop for the day, and feel free to make that call without feeling guilty. So this is the last portion before the sort of discussion portion, but arguably is the most important one, about handling stress and negative emotions during this time. So the first thing that I have to say is that you should be taking time for yourself and doing things that you enjoy doing. So, for example, I have been doing a lot of puzzles, I've been reading a lot of books, because those are things that I enjoy doing, and I don't necessarily have time for those when we're not in this virtual learning environment. So it's super important that you're going to be doing things that you like to do, practicing some self-care, taking time for yourself, because if you don't do that, it's going to be much more difficult to handle the stress and the emotions that come along with this time period. Really make sure that you're making space for those emotions and feeling them and not just ignoring them. So the next thing, and you may have seen this online, is that it's really good to create a schedule that works for you while we do this. So essentially, a way that you could do this is say, okay, I have 5 classes. I'm going to work on, say it's a Monday, I'm going to work on class 1, 2, and 3 at noon, 1, and 2 p.m. respectively. I'm going to attend my synchronous learning class at 11 a.m. on Tuesday and at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. I'm going to go outside between 5 and 6 o'clock every day. That sort of thing, and really scheduling out what you're doing with your days. And those should include when you're getting up, those should include when you're eating food, those should include when you're taking time for yourself. Creating a schedule will really allow you to have a sense of normalcy and a sense of routine that will facilitate your adjustment to this faster. The next important thing is, if you can, to get outside. Being outside is going to make sure that you're not just sitting in a dark room all day, or even just next to a window. Open the windows if you can, if it's nice outside. Just try to, again, take care of yourself and really make sure that you are giving yourself as much as what you can give yourself that you need. The other thing is that the CDC has said that it's totally fine to go outside and walk around, go for a run, take a nice long walk, whatever, as long as you're not within 6 feet of other people. So unless you're walking really up close to strangers, you should be okay. The next thing that's super important is just remember to unplug every once in a while. It can be super tempting to sit in our homes and just let a Netflix series play in the background all day long. That's not good for you, and after a while it's going to get pretty old pretty quick. So just make sure that you're either unplugging or that you're spending some time on the phone with friends, on video calls with friends, that sort of thing can be really helpful in facilitating a positive attitude and positive mental health. And the last thing is just practicing gratitude and practicing mindfulness in terms of the situation that we're in, what you're thankful for, and keeping a positive attitude in that regard. So just as a point where you can find reliable information, so the UMass Lowell Coronavirus Alerts page contains resources for online learning, FAQs, and all important campus updates. This webpage references the 2 other websites on this slide. So the first is the CDC website, and the second is the Massachusetts State website, but each state does have their own COVID-19 page. So you can, if you don't live in Massachusetts, you can go to your state's website and they will have more information specific to your state. So just some important RHSA announcements. All RHSA students will maintain priority registration for next year without any minimum event attendance requirement. We chose to do this because we felt that it wouldn't be fair to penalize students who had not yet attended events who may have been planning on attending them. So all RHSA students will maintain that priority registration for next year, and there's no minimum event attendance requirement for the fall or the spring. Peer leader applications are live now and are due on April 3rd. So just keep that in mind. We released them a little bit early for y'all, just so that you could get a head start on them in the adjustment to your new learning environment. So those will be due April 3rd, and that timeline will remain the same, except for the fact that they were released a little bit early. Lastly, RHSA will hold webinars like this or online events like this periodically to help support you. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on your email for that sort of things. And generally, keeping an eye on your email is going to be extremely important during this time because you don't have professors standing in front of the class making announcements. So definitely keep an eye on your email for a number of reasons, including RHSA. And remember, you are smart and capable. You're able to do this. We're here for you, and you belong at UMass Lowell. So this is the sort of discussion portion of the presentation. What questions do you have? What are you concerned about? And you can feel free to just unmute yourselves and ask those questions, or you can put them in the chat if for some reason you are unable to speak. And yes, I will wait for someone to ask a question.
Hi. So, I mean, I guess my main concern is about tests and other assessments that may happen in the future. As for now, like most of us have been postponed, but I really don't know how teachers will like manage tests with like, I don't know how they're gonna proctor them or how they're just gonna go in general.
Yeah, so the question is about tests and exams and quizzes and stuff. So Blackboard does have options in which professors can put quizzes or tests on there. A lot of times those will have time limits. So for example, when I took a statistics course, my statistics exams were online. My professor would put a time restriction on that. So from the time that I opened it, I would have 3 hours to complete it. And that could be more or less. Some professors say, you have 2 days to open this exam, write these essays, come back and submit this. So generally those will be proctored via Blackboard, and there is precedent for that. The other thing that Rosanna brought up in the earlier webinar that's super important is that if you're submitting things on Blackboard, whether it's a discussion post, whether it's an essay or a paper, make sure that you're writing those things outside of the Blackboard webpage, so like in a Word document or something, because Blackboard doesn't auto-save. So if the Blackboard site closes, or if you navigate away from the tab for too long, you will lose your work. So just make sure, especially in the case of exams or longer things, that you're writing those and composing those in a savable format that's not in Blackboard. This will also help you if for some reason your Blackboard assignment doesn't go through, that if you have a timestamped Word document, you might have a better shot at telling a professor, look, I'm sorry, there was a Blackboard glitch, but you can see here that I have this timestamp thing and it was done. When I submit things to Blackboard, I always email the completed assignment to myself before I submit it, just to have that extra timestamp. And it might be a little bit paranoid, but I'd definitely rather do that than lose the assignment and lose the credit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Something I want to add to that too is if anybody is registered with disability services, All of your services are still applicable. They just may look a little different because it's online, but I still encourage you to reach out to disability services if that is something that you have in the classroom. They just will change things up to make sure that you're accommodated online. Another thing with the tests and quizzes is make sure when you, usually before you open it, it will say whether you can look at the exam multiple times, meaning you can go in and out of the exam, or once you open it, it's yours and you have to finish it. So just be mindful of the directions and especially read them a little bit extra. Just since this is new for everyone, just make sure you pay a little bit extra attention for that.
Okay, thank you.
And definitely if you have questions or if you have concerns about an online exam or an online quiz, definitely reach out to your professor or your TA about that, because these are all things that we're experiencing for the first time. So if you see something that looks incorrect, like if you see that you have a final exam with a time limit of, I don't know, 30 minutes, you might just want to email them and really respectfully and really within your bounds, just ask, hi, I noticed this, essentially, is this correct? And most professors will be gracious either way if it is correct or if it isn't correct and they've made an error. So definitely, as long as you're respectful, don't be afraid to reach out and ask those kind of questions if something seems like it might be incorrect. And if it is correct, then they'll probably also be gracious about it, as long as you're polite. And really being polite and being mindful of the fact that we're all adjusting to a new environment is going to be what's super important in those scenarios where you're just double checking and covering yourself to make sure that everybody is sort of doing the right thing. I would especially, and this is not directly related to that, but it is related to email. I would especially suggest that folks are mindful of writing good emails and writing proper emails, because there are a lot of professors that if you send them an email and it's not, what's the word that I'm looking for, either Rosanna or Kelly? If the email is not formatted in a way that is professional, is there a better word here?
Yeah, not up to professional standards.
Sure. So if the email is something like that, then some professors might not respond to those. So it's going to be super important during this time that folks are familiar with how to write a good email, that you're writing emails with capitalization and punctuation and proper grammar and spelling, because where email is going to become a primary mode of communication, we want to make sure that everybody is communicating and putting their best foot forward that they possibly can.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I also want to add, like, you can use your classmates as resources as well. Like, use these technological applications like Zoom, for example, or FaceTime if you have their numbers, to connect with them, because it is especially important for you to, like, be able to work with somebody, especially if something is not clear, or, you know, if you may not be able to reach your professor, for example. Like, you can work with somebody in class if that's something you feel comfortable doing, and it'll just make the process easier.
Okay, yeah, I have a few classmates I could call. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I have an assignment to do, so
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
thank you.
Yeah, of course, have a good day.
You too, thanks, bye.
Is there anything else that folks want to say before we wrap this up? Cool. All right. So thank you so much for either attending or watching this video after the fact. We really appreciate it. And we will be running things like this in the future. So please keep us updated with what you need support with, what you want sessions like this about, and make sure that you're reaching out to us if you have questions or concerns. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.